G'day, I'm here at World's End. We're camping. A little while ago I published a survey asking people what have they heard which might dissuade them from buying an EV. So I got a good gauge of what messaging is out there that creates the fear and doubt in people's minds about buying an EV if they're thinking about doing that. So unlike most of my other videos, which are specifically for people who own EVs, this one is more for those who aren't part of the community, who are just hear some of the FUD that's out there. If you'd like to watch videos that are directly debunking each point using facts, using data, then I highly recommend checking out Ben Sullins' channel. And I'll put a link at the end of this video or in the description below. But before I get started, I just want to mention a few positive things because I don't want to just get into negative talking. I want to talk about some positive things. As you can see, my car behind me, I don't know whether you can see it, the vehicle to load is plugged in. We're camping here. That's one big advantage of an EV with vehicle to load, where you can output power from the car, basically using your car as a giant power bank. To power things like kettles. I have a little stove as well. One of the big advantages is that you don't have to visit a petrol station anymore. It's one of those things which is a acceptable inconvenience when you're running a petrol car. So I rode a motorcycle a lot before, and I still do. And one thing that you always have to do before you go on a drive, before you go on a ride somewhere, is to go to a petrol station and fill up. That's one thing you don't have to do with an EV because you charge at home, so quite often you can leave with a full charge. So it might not sound like a big thing, but it is something that you notice if you go back to, for example, I go back to riding my motorcycle, I've got to visit a petrol station. So the first one I'm not going to spend too much time on because it's mostly something that's spread by trolls on the internet and in comment sections, and that is that EV batteries catch fire. Can an EV catch fire? Yes, anything can catch fire. Your house can catch fire, but you sleep in your house, don't you? The frustrating thing about this is that EVs are 20 to 110 times less likely to catch fire than a petrol or diesel car. So recently I've heard from a couple of people who know firefighters or people who have done some training on putting out fires, or they've attended a fire which involved a lithium battery, and they've said that it does take a long time for that battery to burn out. I just want to emphasise that the data shows that EVs are 20 to 100 times less likely to be involved in a fire. And if you want to see more information on that, look at EV Fire Safe. I've put a link down below, and or check out Ben Sullins' videos on this matter. So now I've retreated to the shade and coolness, relative coolness of a tent. Moving on now to the second point, will I have to replace my battery? Now here I'm talking about the drive battery, your main power battery. Now firstly, your drive battery comes with a warranty. Mine comes with 8-year warranty. There is degradation that happens with EV batteries, that's expected. Studies have shown that this degradation is happening much slower rate than previously found in under lab conditions. So in real world conditions, the use of the battery is far more random, and the battery is allowed to rest more often. Also, the cars coming out today have much more advanced battery management systems and cooling systems than did, say, the early Nissan Leafs. Here is a graph put together by a fleet manager in England, plotting the state of health of the batteries in their fleet. This is fairly typical of what people have found with battery degradation. My own battery, as you can see here, is at a 96% state of health after about 40,000 kilometres, so this matches expectation. But what happens if there's a technical fault, or if you want to get more range out of your vehicle? Do you go to your original manufacturer if you want your engine replaced in your ICE vehicle? No, you would get a reconditioned engine. And that's what you can do for batteries as well. However, having seen how far and for how long people have driven their EVs, I think this is a service I won't be needing anytime soon. Coming to you from the future, I thought I'd just like to say that although I don't think I'll ever drive more than 500,000 kilometres in my car, the battery will degrade not only over distance but over time. After the 8-year warranty period has expired for my battery, there is a slight potential that there could be a fault. Just like any vehicle, you could have a mechanical fault, you could have a battery fault. That could be like a single cell that might need to be replaced, or you may be able to get a reconditioned battery. Well, probably by that stage there's going to be cheaper and better batteries available for your vehicle. Under 80% state of health, I'm expecting to notice the range reducing and maybe not so much power coming from the battery. But because I'm not driving my car as a performance vehicle, that doesn't bother me too much. But I'm expecting that 60 to 70% state of health to happen after 20 years. So I shouldn't have to worry about that for a long time. Now back to the video. Brings me on to point 3, not enough range. Something like pulling a trailer, caravan, you may halve your range. So there's other people on YouTube who have done tours around Australia with caravans, and I think they get a range of around about 200 kilometres. So you do need to charge up regularly. So personally, range is not an issue for me. I've travelled to Melbourne, I've done a couple of 1,000-kilometre trips. I'm fairly conservative with my charging. I charge up regularly and rarely get my state of charge of my battery down too low. The key to doing longer trips is plan, know where your chargers are, and use an app like Plugshare. And if you even just download it, look at where the chargers are. When I've shown people the amount of chargers that are around, they're quite surprised. So one thing that I've heard and came up in the survey was people who say that EVs are just as bad for the environment. Now there is a production cost, an environmental cost with production. There is more energy required to produce an EV with the battery, but you usually repay that debt within a couple of years. I've made another video on that, and there are plenty of other videos out there that show that EVs are not worse for the environment, or they're actually a lot better. One key point that you need to consider is that oil is not recyclable. Lithium and a lot of the materials in a battery are recyclable. So I don't know how just by that fact alone, I don't know how anyone can say that EVs are just as bad for the environment. Basically, a petrol car, you lose a lot of energy through heat, through the exhaust, but grids are getting cleaner, there's a lot of renewables coming online, and it's just going to improve as time goes. Here in South Australia, where I am, we've got a lot of renewable energy, and so much renewable energy that a lot of it has to be curtailed. Hi, it's me from the future again. Now, you may have heard recently some sensationalist stories about batteries, particularly to do with nickel and cobalt. Now, I'd just like to say my car doesn't contain either of these in the battery. LFP batteries contain no nickel, no cobalt. And these are the ever more increasingly popular chemistry, particularly of cars coming out of China. Also, the story was very light on the facts and also didn't provide a very balanced view. For example, it didn't mention that nickel and cobalt is used in oil refineries. One of the biggest reasons for me to switch to an EV was to no longer be dependent on a worldwide infrastructure to deliver that constant fuel supply of an ever-depleting resource, the extraction of which has its own environmental consequences. Old derelict wells that leak methane and oil, the pollution from shipping accidents, and the fumes we have to breathe in through its combustion, and also, of course, the increase in CO2 in Earth's atmosphere. And now back to the video. The next one is almost as common that people have heard, is that there's not enough charging infrastructure. And for some people this might be true, that the infrastructure is still being built out. There's some points that I heard recently from people travelling from Sydney to Melbourne, which is quite a major thoroughfare. There probably needs to be, and there's some sort of dead spots there that there's not enough chargers. And it's a really good opportunity for companies to come in and establish some big charging infrastructure in these key areas. Personally, infrastructure for me is fine for what I need, even long trips. I've never had an issue. The difference between when I first got my car, which was 2 years ago, and now is a big difference. We've got now in South Australia the RAA Charging Network, but when I did my trip to Melbourne, I didn't have that, but I still managed to get there and back fine. But now we travel all around to South Australia, obviously not, out whoop whoop up the what's it called, the Birdsville track. Maybe I wouldn't take my EV on the Birdsville track, but most other places you'll be fine. Next point down, takes too long to charge. Personally, I haven't found that to be a problem. It's a different way of thinking. You charge your car when it's convenient. If you do that, then you spend virtually no time charging, because you just plug in when you're at home, plug in when you've stopped for a toilet break or a lunch break, and you really don't notice the time it takes to charge. For me, it's convenient to charge because I've got a garage and I charge at home. People without a garage, I can't speak for their use. If they don't have a high usage of their electric car, they might go and charge once a week at a public charger, so that might take a little bit of time. If they can charge at work, that's excellent. So basically, charge where you park is the best way to go. Okay, another small point is that people have said tyres wear out quicker on an EV. They could, because of the torque. If you've got a performance EV and you're constantly racing people at the lights, EVs have a lot of torque, so you could potentially, if you wanted to, wear out your tyres quicker, but you don't have to. I've heard people doing 50,000 kilometres on the tyres that came with my car, and so I'm expecting something like that. It will ruin your weekend. That's a statement made by a former Prime Minister of Australia, and again, this is just a joke. Here I am on the weekend. My EV is actually helping. People are posting photos of themselves having fun on the weekends with their EV and saying I've just ruined my weekend. So it's a bit of a joke. What else have I heard recently? So other things that I've heard, questions. Actually, I've been asked a couple of times by people is what happens if you run out of a charge and you're on the road. Basically, if you're on a long trip, just plan ahead is my suggestion. I don't know, I can't think of a situation where I would go flat. Currently I'm using the vehicle to load. It will not deplete the battery lower than 20% apparently, and I wouldn't ever get down to that low at the moment. I did a full charge before coming camping because I knew I was going to be here, using the car battery to power the fridge and the kettle and the stove. So it's been here for a couple of nights and the state of charge is still pretty high. Bear in mind that the size of the battery in my car is 60 kilowatt hours, so that's like, 5 Tesla Powerwalls or something like that. So there's plenty of charge there. Bring along your granny charger, which is like just one that you plug in the 10 amp outlet. There's far more power point outlets in the world than there are petrol Bowsers. So yeah, I can't think why this would happen. You just haven't planned well, or your state of charge hasn't been accurate, and because you haven't calibrated it. You can call your auto club and they should have give you enough charge to get to the next charging station. So I hope this video has allayed some of that fear and doubt about buying an EV. I think for the large majority of people, an EV will be a very suitable vehicle, and there's really only a few cases where it may not be suitable, or unfortunately they're quite often the loud voices that you hear from those people. So I'm going to enjoy the rest of my weekend. Let's hope I don't ruin it. Please check out some of these other videos on the subject. Also note my references in the video description.